hesitation as I try and read it. And basically, a few weeks ago, Sariputta said, why don't we just do some talks about subjects which we enjoy? And I really wanted to talk about Sariputta. Sariputta, that's the Pali word. Why? Because he had a great friendship with Mogallana. So you've got friendship at the heart of it all, and they both get enlightened, and they're both very wise. Also, they become the chief disciples of the Buddha. What else to say? And Sariputta, because it's not in the talk, he is the first of the Buddha's disciples to ordain others. So the Buddha thinks very well of him. And sometimes you'll see the Buddha saying, I've got a bad back. I want to rest my back. You, Sariputta, you teach the monks. So it's very high standing, yeah? So there we go. All right, so that's a sort of intro. Sariputta and Mogallana. What's a little bit confusing is I will start off with their boyhood names. They were friends as kids, yeah? Before all that, it is a tradition that the Buddha has two chief disciples, but that's actually not fair, I realised doing my research. It's better to say the Buddha has two chief male disciples, and he also has two chief female disciples, and that's the tradition. All the Buddhas have two chief male disciples and two chief female disciples. I didn't know that before writing this, yeah? And so I'll be talking about the men today, because those are the texts I know. But just to say something about these two chief female disciples, one of them, her name was Kema, which I know means patience. And she was married to King Bimbisara, and she was a brilliant Dharma practitioner, teacher, and enlightened. Yeah, she got enlightened. She was so adept that King Pasenadi, when he heard her teaching, he paid homage to her. That's not bad, you know, because, yeah, the sexism went on back then as well. Yeah, so you've got a king paying homage to Kema. The other was Upalavana, yeah? And her name means the colour of a blue water lily, which is a really attractive name, yeah? And she was born into a wealthy family, so there was money there. She must have been so good looking. She had all these powerful, rich men after her, yeah? They all wanted to marry her. And one text says she did marry, other texts say she didn't, but whatever, she ends up as a nun, yeah? And 2 weeks after ordination, she gains enlightenment. Not bad, you know? She does this practice of, I'm not quite sure what it was, she meditates on this kasina. Many of the monks and nuns, they have little kasinas, little discs of colour, and they meditate on these for certain practices, to develop certain emotions or whatever in meditation. She has a fire kasina. I don't know what that is. Maybe she meditates on a candle. But 2 weeks later, she's enlightened. Not bad, all right? The other thing to say about her was, if the first one, Kema, was good at logic and the rest, she was brilliant at magic. She had superpowers. Yeah? So well done her. All right. There's a good talk there. That's for somebody else. Great. Back to the men. Or I should say boys, because as boys, their childhood names were Upatissa and Kolita. Yeah? Their families were friends for about 7 generations. They came from, and they were born on the same day. And they were best mates. They seem to have had a good time. The boys were well educated, they enjoyed sports, And the text actually says, these are my words really, but it says they enjoyed a good laugh. Yeah? So there was this show came to town, and the two of them, you know, they got their money and they paid to see the show, and they laughed and laughed and laughed. Great. And then they thought, that was so good, let's see it again. So they went the second day and laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was great, fantastic. And the third day they went and they said, it doesn't seem so funny anymore, right? And one of the boys said, listen, he said, what is there to look at here? Before these people have reached 100 years, they will all have come to death. What we ought to do is seek for a teaching of deliverance. So, I thought, what a couple of miseries, you know. So anyway, yes, they got tired of the show, just as we get tired of Netflix, you know, and start wanting something a bit more real. That's what happens, yeah. So, but this was really serious, and they wanted a teacher, and they found one. There's a fellow called Sanjaya, yeah, and he had a load of disciples, so they're both studying under Sanjaya, and he is what's called a skeptic. So basically, he's very good at demolishing everybody's viewpoint. That's what he doesn't offer one himself. He just destroys everybody else's viewpoint. Yeah, that's what he does. The Buddha later referred to him as an eel wriggler. Yeah, when he heard about him. So the two, you know, the two lads, they sort of get to grips with the teaching, and then they say, Master, does your doctrine only go so far, or is there something beyond? And he said, well, no. You've got what I offer, you know, but it wasn't enough. So they decided to go looking for teachers. And some texts say they found I want to look at this later, the way Buddhist scriptures exaggerate. It's amazing. You don't go down the road, you go down the road with 500 disciples, or it's always 500 moving everywhere, you know. But we'll come to that later on. I've left the exaggerations out for the first part. But they decide, it says they wandered the whole of India, don't believe it. But they would have done many towns and villages looking for a teacher. And in fact, they did find many ascetics and Brahmins. They discussed things with them. And then they decided eventually, it's not working, we'll split up. And they had this pact. Whoever finds the way, finds the truth, will come back and tell the other. Great. So that's what they did. Okay, one day, Upatissa, who will be Sariputta, he saw a very dignified wanderer on his alms round. His name was Ashvajit. Yeah? In Pali they call it Asajit, but Ashvajit. And Upatissa thought, he looks good. Yeah? And the text talks about his demeanour, his calmness and all that, but basically he thought, he looks good. Yeah? So he was dignified and serene, and Upatissa thought, never before have I seen such a monk. I will approach him and ask, under whom have you been ordained? Who is your teacher? Now Ashvajit, for heaven's sake, he's one of the 5 original disciples, yeah? The Buddha tried to break through to reality through ascetic practices, self-torture. And he had these 5 disciples, and they did it, 6 years the Buddha did it? He became the most famous in northern India for self-torture. And then one day realised, this isn't working at all, and gave it up. Started eating properly. The 5 disciples were disgusted and left, you know. So there's the Buddha with his yogurt drink, that's what apparently it was, and the life of luxury. And he decided just to meditate, and in the end, he found the way to the truth, yeah? Later on, he thought, who can I teach this to? And he thought of his 5 friends, called them that. He went back, he worked with them, maybe for months, and they got enlightened. So there's Ashvajit, he's enlightened. Great. So, Upatissa, he goes to Ashvajit. He asks him these questions. Who is your teacher? Now, Ashviji is probably, this is my speculation, he might think, is this one of those skeptics who's going to try and destroy all my views, as they usually do, yeah? Whatever, that's speculation on my part, but he's not keen. Ashviji's not keen. He goes, these wanderers, you know. So he plays dumb. It's lovely. And he says, so when he's asked what is his teaching, yeah? He says, I am but new to the training, friend. He's an arahat. He's enlightened, you know. I am but new, yeah? It is not long since I went forth from home, and I came but recently to this teaching and discipline. I cannot explain the Dharma in detail to you. Upatissa then comes back with a verse, and he says, be it little or much that you can tell, the meaning only please proclaim to me. To know the meaning is my sole desire. Of no avail to me are many words. It's lovely. He's saying, look, just give me the gist of it. I can work out the rest. Yeah? Yeah? So, in response, Ashviji, the elder, he uttered these verses. This is it. It's coming. Of all those things that from a cause arise. Tathagata, that's the Buddha, the enlightened one, the cause thereof has told. We'll come back to it. And how they cease to be, that too he tells. This is the doctrine of the great recluse. So he's basically saying the Buddha has seen that things arise and that they fall. Okay, we'll go into that a bit more. As Upatissa hears the first two lines, what's it? He enters upon the path to stream entry, just on hearing the first two lines, yeah? As he hears the second two lines, he becomes a stream entrant. He is now irreversibly on the path to enlightenment. This just happened in a few moments, yeah? So what is Ashviji saying? Of all those things that from a cause arise, he's saying everything is process. Everything is process. You see people, you see things, you see events, you know, the earth, the trees. It's all process. All these things have a cause, yeah? Nothing is fixed. I put here, diamonds are not forever. We have that saying there, diamonds are forever. They're not. And I did a little bit of research. You can burn a good diamond at 700 degrees centigrade. Yeah? You could have done that in the school lab, because those burners go up to about 1400 degrees, and you could have made really expensive carbon dioxide, you know. So even diamonds, they're not forever. Yeah? Everything is process. Yeah? What have I said here? So Ashviji recites the last two lines, that he sees how things cease to be also. That, okay, let's give a little example here. Yeah. One lights a match. You see the flame, it burns, yeah? But that is supported by the wood. The flame has a cause, yeah? It's the wood being burnt. When the wood is gone, no flame. And what's fascinating, there's a Hindu thing here which I need to go into at some time. They say, where does the fire go when the fire goes out? It's some big philosophical question out in the East, yeah? And it may sound stupidly simple, but it's not. Because did the fire go round behind the back of me? Did it go to some other, or did it not exist? So that's their question. Where does the fire go when the fire goes out? So the fire of the match is supported by wood. When there's no more wood, there's no fire. Why is that clever? If there's suffering in the world, does it have a cause? If we can find the cause and remove it, suffering doesn't exist. Hasn't gone somewhere. It doesn't exist. And that's what we're going for. And this is all in these two sentences, yeah? So, good old Upatissa, he's a stream entrant, yeah? He says, here will the means of deliverance be found. Don't tell me more, he says to Ashvaji. Just where is your master to be found? And he tells him. He then explains that he has a friend to find. He does a full prostration at the feet of Ashvaji, and off he goes in search of Lalita. Yeah? In time, Upatissa comes across Lalita. Lalita saw him coming in the distance, and he thought, he looks good. My words, yeah. But he thought, today my friend's appearance is quite changed. Surely he must have found what we were looking for, yeah? Then exactly the same process takes place in Lalita. As he hears the first two lines, yeah, he enters upon the path of stream entry. As he hears the final two lines, he is a stream entrant. A stream entrant who is somebody who is irreversibly on the path to enlightenment. Nothing will stop them. Even death will not stop them. They're going to get there. Yeah? There's too much has been taken on. The momentum's up. Yeah? It cannot be reversed. And Sangharakshita said, everybody in Triratna can achieve that this lifetime. Wow. Yeah? Okay, enlightenment. Ooh, stream entrant possible. Okay, good. I'll just throw that in. So, yes. Upatissa, out of good manners, decides to go back and tell Sanjaya, his old teacher, what he's found. Sanjaya is not interested. He says, I'm too old to become a disciple. And he's got all these other verses. He says, yes, the wise, they'll all go off to the Buddha. He said, but all the fools, they'll come to me. You know, he's worried about his income, yeah? So that's poor old Sanjaya. Yeah, there we go. One last thing. This is something I wanted to say, yeah? This teaching, the Buddha has seen the arising of things and their cause and the cessation. It is subtle. It is really subtle. Even if we could sort of get it here, we've then got to get it right down into our guts, into our heart and our guts. That's the Buddhist path. We can learn a truth, but we have to get it down into our being. Then, you know, we're really doing it, yeah? The Buddha, when he gained enlightenment, he thought that discovery was incredibly unlikely, what he found. He said it was like a blind man on a dark night finding a priceless jewel in a heap of dung. You know, it was just so unlikely. It's so subtle, this enlightenment, yeah? So, later on, that teaching of, you know, the Buddha sees the cause, yeah? It gets tidied up a little bit into this being that becomes, upon the arising of this, that arises. I like to do it with hands. This being, that becomes, upon the rising of this, that arises. This not being, that does not become, upon the cessation of this, that ceases. I remember doing this in front of Sangharakshita once. All right. It was in his office, you know. He didn't say that's daft, you know, but I like it, yeah. I'm so visual, I need it, you know. So, I remember somebody pinching my talk. After I left Southampton, somebody gave my talk, you know, that I usually gave. And this Mitra said, but he didn't do the hands, you know. Wasn't the real thing, you know. So, yeah. And what's it saying? You know, this being that becomes. So if there's meanness in me, there's a tightness arises. There's unhappiness. If the meanness goes, I relax, I become happier. It's not complicated, you know. Things have supportive conditions, take them away, it goes. Not somewhere, it doesn't exist, right? It's all rather brilliant. And Sariputta and Mogallana, as they are to be called, they have obviously been practicing in past lives. They are ready for these jewels, you know. I haven't got it, yeah. It's all rather brilliant. But the Buddha, in his compassion came up with some alternative teachings for the likes of me and perhaps us. He came up with things like the Eightfold Path. Now, the Eightfold Path, it should come with a yellow and black cover called Enlightenment for Dummies. Yeah? You don't need to be clever to practice the Eightfold Path. It's all laid out. You just follow the road, do what you're told, and you will become subtle, and then the insights can arise. Yeah? And later on, he summarised the Eightfold Path down to the Threefold Path. We won't go into that today. Great. Fantastic. So I just wanted to say that we've had these brilliant teachings, and then stuff for the plodders. Great. Good. I shouldn't say that. All right. The two friends arrive at the Bamboo Grove monastery where the Buddha was living. Yeah? And when the Buddha saw them, he declared, these two will be my chief disciples. You can imagine this news disappointed some of the monks there, yeah? They've only just arrived, and they're chief disciples, But the Buddha explains they've been practicing for a long time. Kalpas in past lives, these two, And they get their names. The Buddha gives them the names Sariputta and Mogallana. And it's a bit crazy because they've basically, I find this a bit strange. Maybe the names worked in different ways then. They've both taken on names from their mums. Yeah? Because Sariputta's mother is called Rupasari. Rupa means beautiful, so she's beautiful Sari. And Sari was the name of, it's a shortened form of this bird. So she was like this beautiful bird. And he's got her name, Sariputta. Putta means the son of. So he's the son of Sari. Yeah? Great, that was his name. Maybe that's why we say Shakyamuni. He's the wise Muni from the Shakyan clan. Maybe it works like that, I don't know. But the Buddha's given him the name Sariputta. Mogallana, his mother's name I think was Mogallita or something, but I don't understand how that worked. But he's named too after his mum. Great. Okay, within a week, Mogallana is fully enlightened. Ta-da! Fantastic. It took Sariputta 2 weeks. Slouch, yeah. Took his time there. But it's crazy because Sariputta was one day just in attendance while the Buddha was dealing with a skeptic called Diganaka, yeah? And Diganaka, old clever clogs, is saying, I don't have views, I don't have opinions, yeah? And the Buddha said, you believe that? He said, yes. So you believe you don't have beliefs? That's a belief. Ta-da! And Sariputta is watching all this, gets enlightened, But also, he did think, I think they possibly out of this came Sariputta thinking, these teachings do need to be a bit organised, yeah? And he sets about doing that. He sets about Sariputta, he's got a great mind. He is the scholar. He is always considered the wisest in the Pali canon. Yeah? And I haven't said, maybe it'll come up later, I hope it does, Mogallana is the magic one. Yeah? He's got these incredible magical abilities. And Sariputta has great reason, great insight. Yeah? I'm going to jump ahead here. Just that, no, leave it there. But they work as a team, these two, and they're great. They're great, yeah? So, Sariputta starts systematizing all the teachings, because it's all just by word, And it's a good thing to do. And he starts creating all the lists. And you think, Buddhism's so full of lists, the Threefold Path, the Three Jewels, the Four Noble Truths, the 5 Spiritual Faculties, the 6 Perfections, the Eightfold Path. We've got all these numbers, but they're handy. Because if you see, I remember testing friends of mine, I said, I'd say, what's the Eightfold Path? And they go, oh, well, there's perfect vision, and there's, yeah. And after about 10 minutes, we get there, yeah? But because you know there's eights, you know there's bits missing, and after a while you struggle, you put them all together, yeah? By the way, I used to do school visits, and all the kids knew the Eightfold Path. So I memorised it, you know, just because I was teaching school children, yeah? But it's quite handy knowing that there's 8 things there. So it does work. But also he started organising all the teachings, the suttas. I'm going to call them the suttas. The life of the Buddha, the little stories. Yeah? And all the ones with numbers in them, like, the Threefold Path, the Four Noble Truths, he organised them into the section for numbers. So if you think, oh, that thing... It was 5 somethings. Oh, look in the 5s, look in the numbers lot. You know, you'll find it in there. If it's got 5 in it, it really works. So he sorted out all the numbers. He sorted out the long teachings, the middle teachings, the short teachings, and then the leftover odd bits. So that's the 5 sections in the Sutta Pitaka. Pitaka means basket. So it was all the little stories, the suttas, yeah, in one basket. So I just mentioned that. Also, there was the Vinaya. I'm going to blind you here because we're all, we've all been going it a while. So I'm not holding back. The Vinaya, what's the Vinaya? The Vinaya is when a monk or a nun did something a bit wrong, and the Buddha came in and said, all right, in future there's a rule here. You're not doing this, you're not doing that, You're not eating all day, you're going to stop eating at 12. I don't know, that might be one, right? But all these rules came into being, and that's the Vinaya. Vinaya Pitaka basket. So we now got 2 things. We've got the Sutta Pitaka, we got the Vinaya Pitaka, and then Sariputta. They call him the father of the Abhidharma. And the Abhidharma is the 3rd basket, the Abhidharma Pitaka. And these are all the thinking, all the systematization of the teachings, yeah? So, I'll give you an example of one, all right? So we're working on our egotism, we go around thinking, I'm great, I'm fantastic, I'm the most important thing in the world. I know because my mum told me. Yeah, great. So here we go. And along comes the scholars. They say, no. You are broken up into 5 sections. There are 5 heaps that make you up, There is your form, your body. There are your thoughts, your mental functions, yeah? There are your emotions, the choices you make. There is consciousness. So you think you are one thing. You are but like 5 colours on an artist's palette. So you're not one thing. So they're breaking up the ego a little bit through analysis. Okay, very good, very good, very good. They went further. They went much further, yeah? They looked at consciousness. And they listed 89 classes of consciousness. 89. There were 28 classes of form, yeah? 5 types of feeling, 6 types of perception, and 50 classes of mental formations. Yeah? So this is the good old Abhidharma. I remember once Sangharakshita, he said, I was going to give a talk today, I didn't know what to give a talk on. I thought maybe I could talk about, and his face, he went, the Abhidharma. And his face is like disgust. I say, I saw him do that. But it must be a bit boring, yeah? So anyway, so you get a feel of these 3 baskets, yeah? The suttas, or the life of the Buddha, the Vinaya, the rules, and the Abhidharma. These are the 3 baskets. That is the Pali Canon. It's huge, yeah? It's huge. And yes, so just let's come back a little bit now to... So Sariputta was called the father of the Abhidharma. And I've looked around. Some scholars later on say he created all of the sort of Abhidharma. Others say clearly not. The Abhidharma came into existence over hundreds of years after his death, So, but you can give him credit for a couple of books, yeah? I'm saying books. It was all verbal. Back to these two. So these two, they really worked. They were brilliant teachers, the two. They worked as a team. The Buddha said, Sariputta is like a mother who brings forth. She gives birth, yeah? Well, Mogallana is like a nurse of that which has been brought forth. Sariputta trains to the fruit of stream entry, and Mogallana trains to the highest goal. So they worked as a team. Sariputta taking the beginners, getting them meditating, getting them all the way up to stream entry. When they're stream entrance, in comes Mogallana. He takes over to enlightenment. Wouldn't that be nice? We had that. Yeah. So there's various stories. There's various stories here. I thought I might just, Sariputta, he wasn't just brilliant. He was kind as anything. And apparently he would go to bed last, sweeping up the monastery, or the huts where the young monks had been, checking they all had beds. This old fellow, I couldn't find out more. I think one night he might have been locked out, but I can't check that out. But he used to clean up, So the humility there and the love. One day, there's a naughty man called Devadatta who tries to create a schism. He wants to be head of the order, and the Buddha said, I wouldn't even give it to Mogallana and Sariputta, let alone you, So he gets very disgruntled, and he goes off with a whole load of new monks. It's 500, it's always 500, And Sariputta and Mogallana go after them. The Buddha sends them. He says, and Mogallana's warned, be careful, these are not your friends, this Sariputta and Mogallana. And Devadatta's a bit dim. He goes, all right, okay. Devadatta is brilliant in magic himself. He got up to the 4th jhana and developed psychic abilities, blah, 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 blah. He thinks he's great. He's gone off with 500, and then he says it. He says, I'm just going to rest my back. You can talk to the young monks here. So Sariputta and Mogallana, they talk with them. And after a while, they start getting, it's becoming stream entrance and all that. And in the end, the 500 all get up and they go back to the Buddha. Yeah. So, what other, there's great stories. I tell you, the way they appreciate each other. Now, in these suttas, you have all these sort of mythical beings, yeah? We have the devas. Now, I know people who believe they've seen devas. You cannot prove anything. We've got, how many physicists? We've got Ellie online, we've got Brenda here. We can prove nothing. I'm a physics teacher. Nothing can be proved, yeah? It's, it might be the Matrix, you're in a tank somewhere, you don't know that, yeah? We know nothing, yeah? So, having said that, some people think there's devas, yeah? We can't prove they're wrong, all right? You might be asleep. This is not happening, yeah? We're a computer program. But they've got all these crazy creatures, and I found this interesting. I'm going to push this one out a little bit. We are not attuned to seeing mythical beings. Most of us don't see devas. Some people do. Now, what I want to say to you is, we're not trained. If we were trained, it might be different. I came back from Ireland once, and Sangha actually said, did you see any little leprechauns there? The little green people. I said, no, Randy, sorry, I didn't. Yeah. This is conversations with my guru, yeah. But we're just not trained that way. But it is interesting how we can be trained. I was a waiter in a restaurant for years, for 6.5 years, Buddhist restaurant. I was there, I don't know how long. I was there about longer than that, 8 years. But your intuition develops. And customers come in the door, and after about 4 years, a good waiter knows just what the customers are like as they walk in. It's faster than thought. It's faster than thought. They come in the door, can we have a table? Why? What are you going to do with it? It's a terrible joke. It's not funny. They think it's fantastic, but you got them right, Another couple come in and you just look at the floor. It's a flirtatious wife and a totally jealous husband. Yeah? And they haven't come in yet, and you know that. You say, "This way, sir," and you lead them upstairs, keep your head down. She's going, "Ah." And lead them to the table, you give them menus. This is, after 4 years, you know this. Yeah? You can clown around, you can have jokes. Your whole intuition tells you what. I say this to you, a customer is naked to a good waiter. Ooh, it's scary. Yeah? Naked. My father was in customs and excise. You know customs? He said a customs officer after 12 years has developed his or her intuition. They can tell if you're smuggling as you walk in the door. They know. You know, just look. But it takes 12 years, they said. So anyway, so that's what I was just wondering about the talents we can learn, you know. And some people have met some dark characters. You know, I remember Satya Bandhu and Ratna Bodhi coming home one night, and they opened the front door in our old retreat centre, and this evil force hit them both in the face. They thought, what was that? Yeah? And all I'll say about myself is, when I've had good friends and they've died, I felt in contact with them even for months, you know? So, and it does feel like contact, so there we go. So, anyway, but all this. So these people live in this world. I'm saying all that, finally, yeah, because it does really pops up at the end, yeah? We're great. Sariputta one day is meditating. He's there, sitting there meditating. Mogallana can see him from the distance. He's meditating. His friend is meditating. They're really good friends. They love each other. There's these two mythical beings, these yakshas. They're flying past. They're not very nice creatures, yeah? And one of them says, "Look at old Baldy down there." You know, the text says bald pate, yeah? "Look at old Baldy down there. I think I'll hit him." And he goes flying down and smashes him as hard as he can on the head, you know. And poor Sariputta goes, "Ooh, ooh." And Mogallana has watched the whole thing. He's horrible. He goes running down. He's going, "Are you all right, brother? Are you all right?" He says, "I've got a headache," you know. He says, "You've got a headache. This yaksha has just hit you so hard it would have felled a she-elephant." He said, "It is wonderful. It is amazing. All you say is, 'I've got a headache.'" And Sariputta says, "It is amazing. It's amazing. You can see yakshas. I can't even see mud sprites," he says. So I love this mutual appreciation of each other's qualities. Yeah, you know. Good. I mean, I remember doing this other text in Southampton, and this really upset people. It really upset people because it went against hierarchy and everything. The Buddha, one day, the whole assembly is there, and the Buddha is going to recite the law, you know, the rules they follow. And the first watch comes, and it goes, and the Buddha doesn't say anything. They're all waiting. Anand's going, you know, first watch, Lord. Second watch comes, Buddha doesn't say anything. Lord, you know, Anand's going to say, yeah. And it goes on and on through the night, and finally the Buddha just says, "The assembly is not pure." Yeah? And basically, some monk is not a monk. They've got the robes, they've shaved their hair, they've got the bowl, and they've got a nice little business going, a nice little, you know, income, yeah? They're out because Indian society would support people who went forth, who cut off the hair and wore the robe, yeah? Doesn't matter, you don't have to be a Buddhist. Indians supported anybody who was a wanderer. It was a civilized society in many ways, yeah? So somebody's got in on the act. They don't meditate, we don't know what goes on in their head. But the Buddha's not going to recite the rule, it's called the Pratimoksha, with this fellow sitting there. He just says the assembly is not pure. And old Mogallana just looks around. "This way, brother." Chucks him out. I told that in Southampton. God, that got some anger. "When are you going to throw me out? When are you going to throw me?" So one woman. Anyway, there we go. But, and then the Buddha gives this lovely sermon, which I won't go into, about how the ocean, is it's like the Dharma. How the ocean has one taste, taste of salt. His teaching has the taste of freedom. He goes through it all, and how if there's a dead body in the ocean, it's chucked up onto the shore, and if there's effectively a dead body in the Sangha, it's out too. All right. So there we go. But that was Mogallana with his psychic powers. Yeah. So, all right. Coming in now. So, what I'm going to do over the next bit, I just want to talk about Sariputta's last days, yeah? And also the Buddha's comment after the Sariputta's death. And then I want to talk about how the Mahayana, much later on, they sort of ridicule Sariputta. They use him as an object, as somebody who represents wisdom in the old school, the Hinayana, and they attack him for it. All right, but that's 500-600 years later. Good. So, oh, good old Sariputta. Well, I won't read all of this. I've printed out loads here. So Sariputta, he realizes, he's been practicing for years and years and years with the Sangha, with the Buddha. He's a chief disciple with Mogallana. And he wonders, he thinks it's coming near the end. I've got about 7 days left in me, he says. And he says, I wonder where I shall have my final passing away. Where will the place be? And he goes through the places where other friends have gone to die, yeah? Or we don't say die in Buddhism, not when you're enlightened. It's the parinirvana, the supreme enlightenment, yes? They're shuffling off this mortal coil, as we call it, giving up the body. But what follows, we do not know. An enlightened being giving up the body. Good. So, he says, he remembers his mother. And the thought that came to him, now this is extraordinary. Although she is the mother of 7 arahats, it's true. Sariputta has 3 sisters and 3 brothers, and they all got enlightened. They don't come up in the story, but all their names are there. You go into Wikipedia, all their names are there. These 6 arahats, they're his brothers and sisters. It's funny, that does happen a little bit. Lokamitra, 2 of his sisters, they're order members as well, so you've got like an order family. Aniketa in New Zealand, who I used to know, her daughters all got ordained. I don't think they all stayed ordained, but so you get these little clusters, yeah? So you've got this whole sort of enlightened family, but he thinks, he says, I have helped so many people, yeah? Let's just listen to some of them. He says he has preached to the gods, yeah? A large number of gods attained He's helped gods, these angels, become enlightened, yeah? He said he's helped others just to get halfway up there to stream entry, yeah? He goes through all these people. He says, but my own mother, I haven't done anything there, yeah? And he thinks, people will say, well, he helped everybody else. Why didn't he help his mother, yeah? So he thinks, that's what I'll do. I'll go off, I shall get the master's permission and go off to Nalaka, where his mum lives. Right? So he goes to the Buddha with 500 friends, yeah? And and he says, may, O Lord, the Blessed One, permit, may the Exalted One consent, the time for my final passing away has come. I have relinquished the life force. He's asking for permission to die. Yeah? He says, he does this whole verse, yeah, I soon shall be released going forth. This is the last time I will worship you. Yeah? He says he's putting down the burden. He's looking forward to it. Don't worry. It's all right, At last for me, Nirvana's time has come. Relinquished have I now the will to live. It's over. He's finished. Good. And the Buddha, he's not allowed to say anything. He's not allowed to say, go and do it, because then they'll say, oh, he encouraged death, yeah? So he just keeps quiet, yeah? And he just says, where will your passing away be? And he, tells him, Nalika, yeah? And I want to go back to the chamber where I was born, yeah? The room where he was born. And the good old Blessed One says, do, Sariputta, what you think timely. He's saying this all the time. Do what you think it is the time for. It's the Buddha's reply so often, yeah? He says, but before you go, please, would you just give the Sangha a teaching? So he does that. He gives them a teaching, right? And then all the people, they're hugging his legs. They don't want him to go. He moves on. He says, look, I have practiced. He says, I have practiced throughout an eon and 100,000 kalpas. It's a long period of time he's been practicing for, yeah? He wants to go to the city of Nirvana, he says, the unaging, undying, the peaceful, the blissful, the heat assuaging and secure, which has been entered by many hundreds of thousands of Buddhas. That's where he wants to go. All right? Okay. Don't take it too literally. He's going, yeah? He says to the Buddha, if I've said anything to offend you, please forgive me. The Buddha says, you haven't, it's fine, but you're forgiven. He does, yeah. And he says, and he praises him. He says, I'm nothing to reproach you. You are learned, Sariputta, of great wisdom, broad, bright, quick, keen, penitent wisdom, yeah? And do what you think it is timely. So off he goes. Sariputta hugs his feet, yeah? Now, all this exaggeration, just we got the time. Why do we have it? The Pali Canon's full of it. It's always 500 monks doing this, 500 doing that. The earth shakes, something happens, the Devas hear it, they shout to the Devas, blah, 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 blah. It goes all the way up through the Deva realms to the Brahma realms, back down again. The earth shakes. Why? It's drama. It's drama. Yeah? All they got is words. What do we do today? Yeah? Spielberg, he'll have your cinema seat vibrating. Everybody speaks with powerful voices, All the lights are strong. That's how we do it. In opera, it's absolutely artificial. It's a bit awful, People doing nice things for bad people. Isn't that what opera is, yeah? Self-sacrifice. Anyway, leave that. But, you just go back to black and white silent movies. All the men had black eye liner and, and people were used to that. It's just convention, all the hair standing up, yeah? And have you, I thought this, just this morning I was thinking, I've never seen a shadow in Star Trek. And we're used to that. I only thought that this morning, because the lights come on three sides. We don't notice. We get used to our conventions. Yeah. So this is theirs. This is theirs. When somebody does something, there's hundreds of them doing it. It's drama. Yeah. So listen to this. So immediately after the master had given his permission and the venerable Sariputta had risen from paying homage at his feet, the great earth cried out and with a single huge tremor shook to its watery boundary. So right out to the shore's edge, the earth is shaking. Yeah? It was as though the great earth wished to say, though I bear these girdling mountain ranges with Mount Meru, though I can hold up the mountains, yeah, I can't handle this. Yeah, this is too good. He says this vast accumulation of virtue, it's a bit too much for him. And mighty thunder split the heavens, a vast cloud appeared, and heavy rain poured down. Okay, good. It's a convention. It's lovely. I think you need to know this in order to read the Pali Canon, because otherwise it can be a bit weird and a bit horrible, But once you can get in there, there's jokes, there's humour, there's compassion. They're great stories, yeah. So, and And then the Buddha, he calls him the general of the Dharma. I wrote that down somewhere. Dharma Senapati, yeah? He calls him like a military, you're the general of the Dharma. Like a military man. He organizes it all so well, yeah? He says, you practice for an eon, thousands of kalpas, and he says, before all that, you worshipped other Buddhas in past times. Good. So Sariputta has achieved what he intended to achieve, yeah? He's done it. The Lord says, bhikkhus, accompany him for a while. Yes, so they do, out of Jeta Grove. All the crowds go. He sends the crowds back, yeah? This is a road, he says, that none can avoid. I'm going off to die, yeah? And asked them to return. To the monks who accompanied him, he said, you may turn back now. Do not neglect the Buddha, the master. Thus, he went on, but only with his own group of 500 monks, yeah? So he goes off to his mum, sorry, yeah? And he stops up at various villages on the way. It takes about 6-7 days to get there. He's only got that long to live. The people like his presence. He reaches Nalika. He sees a nephew, yeah? He says, is your grand aunt at home? That's his mum, yeah? Rupasari, yeah? And he says, yes, Venerable Sir. He said, then go and announce our coming. Tell her that I shall stay in the village for one day and ask her to prepare my birth chamber and provide lodgings for 500 bhikkhus, yeah? Okay? So poor old Rupasari, yeah? She says, the nephew tells her, he says, where is he now? He's at the village gate. Is he alone? No, he's got 500 bhikkhus with him. All right. So she sorts it all out. She finds accommodation for the 500. Yep. And Sariputta then goes with one friend, I can't remember his name, Chanda, to his old bedroom. Isn't that great, going back to your mum's and staying in your old bed? Well, it's the room he got born in, yeah? Great. Then she notices he really is dying. He's got dysentery. This is a bit sordid. They keep bringing in buckets, obviously, for him to sit on, and out. She realises he's got dysentery, yeah? And she says, the news of my son is not good. He's dying, yeah? And then it happens, it tells us, the 4 great divine kings said, where is the general of the Dharma? Where's he dwelling now? And they see he's at Nalika, and they say, let's go and have a last sight of him. So the 4 great kings, these are 4 mythical beings. Great, they're almost like foundation stones holding up the universe. The 4 great kings come and visit. I don't know any more about them, yeah? He says, who are you? They say, we are the great divine kings, Venerable Sir. Why have you come? We want to attend on you during your illness. He says, it's all right, I've got an attendant, got his Chanda. And they left, yeah? Then in comes Shakya, the king of the gods. He pops in. The king of the gods, you're right. After him comes Mahabrahma, the great Brahma, yeah? Sariputta says, it's okay, cheers, off you go, all right? Then his mum, he calls her the Brahman lady, yeah? She sees all this coming and going, yeah? Who could they have been? So she goes to Sariputta and she says, she says, who are they? He said, the 4 great kings. He says, are you then greater than they? He said, they're like temple attendants, so the elder, I'll move on more quickly, that they guard with swords, and they sort of stand over us, yeah? And she said, now who came next? He said, that was Shakya, the king of the gods, yeah? Are you then greater than the king of gods, dear? She says, yeah? Well, he's like a novice, a beginner, who carries a monk's belongings, yeah? Answers Sariputta, yeah? And he tells him what he did for the Buddha, yeah? And she says, and he says to his mum, and that was your own Lord and Master, the great Brahma. then are you greater, my son, even than my lord, the great Brahma? Yes, he says. And he gives a little story about Brahma and the Buddha and this golden net, yeah? And then she thinks, if my son's power is such as this, what must be the majestic power of my son's master and Lord? If my son has all these visitors, what's the Buddha like, she's thinking, you know? Because she's just not receptive. And you do wonder if this is a joke. What could be harder on this planet than converting your mum to Buddhism? Is there a tougher job, you know? Yeah? She still remembers washing your bottom and changing your nappy, you know, and suckling you, you know. You go, oh, yeah, darling, yes. Yeah, do you still like... Anyway, and here's you trying to teach her the Dharma. Not easy, yeah? And she does see you like that still, you know? Yeah? So, she becomes impressed. And it's funny, I do remember Banti once... he picked up his mum and he brought her to our community, and she looked just like him, you know, except she didn't have his big tummy, yeah, sorry. And she was nearly 90, and she was saying, you know, he's very important, my son, you know, and he's travelled lots of countries and all this, you know. Really, Mrs. Ingwood, yeah. There we go. Anyway, there we are. Yeah. So, but she's been impressed, you know, if these visitors, you know, who is my son, yeah? And then she goes through the fivefold rapture, you know, she goes up through all these raptures, finer and finer, suffusing her whole body. And Sariputta thinks, rapture and joy have arisen in my mother, now is the time to preach the Dharma to her, yeah? And... he goes through the qualities of the Buddha. And we do know that you'll meet this. It's the Lalitaratna Vandana. I've forgotten the beginning. Yes, we chant this in this centre. We chant this in our movement, you know. Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vecha Charana Sampanna. And it's all the qualities of the Buddha. All these lovely qualities, yeah? And he chants this to her mum, and all these virtues, and she becomes a stream entrant. Ta-da! She's done it. He's done it. Yeah. She's irreversibly on the path. Yeah. She then says, "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" You know. Good old mum, yeah? Did you not bestow on me this ambrosia, the knowledge of the deathless? Why didn't you do that, you know? Yeah? But anyway, he's done it now, good. And then this is a bit brutal, this, yeah? Now I have given my mother, the Brahmin lady, Rupasari, the nursing fee for bringing me up. I've repaid her. And it's curious, I haven't found it, but somebody found this text where the Buddha was asked, is it possible to repay your parents for giving birth to you? And the Buddha just went, no, it's too big. That's strong. Yeah, he says there's only one way, and that is you give them the Dharma. It's the only possible way of repaying that fee. You know, that is tough stuff, you know. And I wrote down here, you know, we usually really don't appreciate our parents until they're long dead. You know, before that we've been too busy fighting with them, you know, to realise they've sat up with us when we got measles and all this, you know, bought our school uniforms, all the things, you know. And it's an enormous thing they've done. Yeah, and there we go. It's a big thing. So there we go. Anyway, he says, this should suffice. And then in some texts it says, you know, she's a stream entry, he just goes, you may go, woman. This text said, you may now go, Upasika, yeah? It's over. He's paid, it's gone. Now it's his night, yeah? And So the community, the 500 all pour in again. I don't know how that's possible. Yep. And he asked Chanda to sit him up, and he says, "For 44 years I have lived and travelled with you, my brethren." He says, if I've done anything, and he said anything or done anything that was unpleasant, forgive me. They, of course, say, "Sir, you never brought displeasure to us," you know. So, and he says, "Maybe you could forgive us," yeah? But anyway, let that be. So, he sits there, he goes up through, it says, the 9 successive stages of meditation. So up through the 4 dhyanas, up through the 4 arupa dhyanas, and then there's another phase which I know nothing about. Then he comes back down again, right down to the 1st, then he goes back up to the 4th, and then he dies. Yeah? It's the same death that the Buddha did. Great. Poor old Mogallana, he died about a week, I'm not sure it was after or I think maybe after, yeah. The Buddha soon after them, yeah. And it's a curious, it's a curious thing. Yeah, Mogallana got murdered by a rival spiritual group. Weird. You know, don't trust religion, yeah. So, soon after Sariputta and Mogallana had attained final nirvana, so the Buddha was sitting there, and after surveying the silent sangha of bhikkhus, he addressed them thus: "Now, the assembly seems to me as though it were empty. The assembly is empty for me now that Sariputta and Mogallana have attained final nirvana. There is nowhere that one can look to and say, Sariputta and Mogallana are living there. The Blessed One, in the past, accomplished and fully enlightened, each had a pair of disciples, the equal of Sariputta and Mogallana, and so will those in the future." Then he says, "It is wonderful, it is marvellous in these disciples how they give effect to the Master's teaching and carry out his advice, and how they are dear to the Sangha and loved and respected and revered by the Sangha." So these two really make it work for the Buddha. They really look after the Sangha, yeah? Maybe the Buddha's a little bit frightening at times, but these two are kind, you know, yeah? And then he says one of the weirdest things ever. He says, "It is wonderful, it is marvellous, in the perfect one," that's himself, "that when such a pair of disciples has attained final nirvana, he neither sorrows nor laments." He says, "They're gone. I've had 44 years of them, and I'm okay." Strange, eh? Yeah? But that's what he's basically saying, you know? He neither sorrows nor laments. And why should he? He is the Buddha. But it just gives us something to think about. And I really do wonder. I made this joke in another talk, you know, Star Trek, they say it's life, Jim, but not as we know it. This is death, Jim, but not as we know it, you know. I mean, when my mum died, I was convinced she was, first of all, not just me, my uncles and aunts. She said she's still around. She's hanging around for ages, my mum, you know. And she's sort of finally going now after 4 years. But I think of her as, you know, she'll be back. I think of myself, I'll be back. This, for me, is death. This is not that. This is perfect, you know, perfect nirvana. They're not coming back. What is that? I don't know. Yeah? But it's interesting. Yeah? It's interesting. So there we go. And the Buddha just adds that, how could it be otherwise? That which is born is bountiful. Yeah? It's not otherwise possible. Yeah? So there we go. Now, after hundreds of years, the Abhidharma became somewhat stale. You can imagine with those 86 types of consciousness and all the rest of it, yeah? And the energy sort of went out of the, what they call the Hinayana. It's a rude word. It means the little way, yeah, the little vehicle. Given it to that title was given to them by the Mahayana, the Great Way, yeah, which came about 500 years later, yeah. But they use poor old Sariputta, almost there, I'll be quick now. They use him as a foil. They say, we want to show that the Hinayana was limited. So they bring Sariputta, they change his name to Putra in the Sanskrit, and they use him as a bit of a joke figure, you know. So we will tonight do a puja, and it's got the Heart Sutra in it. The Heart Sutra, it's a great text, the Bodhisattva of Compassion when he meditated deeply. It's the essence of wisdom. It's really wise stuff, yeah? Now, the context is, Avalokiteshvara is reciting it. He's reciting it. Who's he reciting it to? Sariputta. So they're going to teach Sariputta what real wisdom is. Yeah? That's what the Mahayana have decided. He needs to find out what real wisdom is. So we're going to teach him. But the cheeky devils, they don't send the Bodhisattva of wisdom. It's not necessary. Send in the plumber. He can do it, you know. They send in the Bodhisattva of Compassion. You know, he's good enough. Yeah? Yeah. Anyway, there we go. So it's a bit naughty. In the Vimalakirti Nidesha, poor old Sariputta's there, worrying about, you know, when they're going to feed and things like that and all this. He's, you know, the suitors having a go at him. But at one time, I printed this out because it's so good. At one time, Sariputta is really worried about duality, you know, and the Mahayana say there is no duality. There's no he or she or it or anything, you know. And Sariputta is rather worried about it. So, is it a goddess? Yes, a goddess listening to this sutra, Vimalakirti. I said sutra, not sutta. Sutra is Hinayana, sutra is Mahayana, yeah? Changes to Sanskrit. And this goddess, she starts dropping flowers all over the assembly. And all the bodhisattvas, and it's lovely, the flowers bouncing off their heads, and lovely, it's great. But the poor monks, Sariputta and the others, the flowers stick. And they've got a rule that they're not allowed to wear adornments. So they're all sort of like, trying to brush them off. It's naughty, you know, yeah? They're showing, look how limited they are, yeah? And at one point, and this goddess, she accuses Sariputta of being attached to duality, yeah? And Sariputta asks, he says to the goddess, you know, if you're so spiritually advanced, why doesn't she transform out of her female state? Now, is that sexism or what? Yeah? So she responds by using her powers, which are much greater than Sariputra's, and they swap bodies. And suddenly Sariputra's a woman. Ooh! What do you say in Germany? Oops. Yeah? And she's doing this just to show the whole illusion of duality. Yeah? And she's saying all things are empty, and so male and female don't really exist. It's nice, isn't it? But poor old Sariputta, it's not fair. It's not fair. He was fantastic in the Pali Canon, and they use him, they say, as a foil. Yeah? So that's it, really. I think that's the end of it, yeah? One last little detail. Some fella, Cunningham, in 1851, found the relics, or dug up the relics of Sariputta and Mogallana. Found them in two little containers, yeah? And they had been divided, and they were in some other stupas as well, and brought them back to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. There was loads of, I mean, the Buddhists in England were fighting like hell, you know, and finally the Indian government got on the scene, and Victoria and Albert Museum said, well, if we give these ones back, we'll have to give back relics to all the other religions too. And then the British government just said, do it. and they did it, you know. And the Buddhists actually argued, they said, well, those other relics, you're a Christian country, you can have those. We're a Buddhist country, you can't have ours, you know. So they said that. But, and these relics, they did a whole tour. They went to Sri Lanka, first of all, the Colombo Museum. They went around India. They went as far as, they went to Burma. Where else? I think they even got to Tibet, yes, and they're back in India now. Sangharakshana saw them on this tour, and people said that they saw the relics turning and giving off rainbows. There we go. And that's a nice way to end the talk. Thank you very, very much. Good.